All right, now we're gonna get going. So hopefully you guys online are hearing me. Give me a thumbs up or a unmute and tell me or something. Yesterday I talked for like 5 minutes and then they're like, we can't hear you.
Oh, fun.
I can hear you, Russ.
Trevor can hear me. How about the rest of you guys on Zoom? Can you hear me? Bueller? Oh, there we go.
Yes, we can hear you, Russ.
Awesome, thanks, Jesse. Okay, if you guys on Zoom will throw in the first and last name and office, that'd be great. And we are going to get started here, but first, I'm going to let Crystal come up and talk for a minute.
Yes. Hi, everybody on Zoom. Lovely people in person. So I had recently come up, this is applicable for Utah, to California people, so it's not applicable to you. In the state of Utah, the owner's title policy is optional. In your contract, in section 6.2, that's where your seller agrees to pay for it. So make sure you discuss that with a seller if you're representing the seller. Because that can be something that he can say, I don't want to pay for, and negotiate out of the contract. With that being said, owner's title policy is super, super important. So today I have a handout for people in person, and Russ will send everybody the PDF to people who are virtual. 7 reasons why owner's title policy is important. Really, so there's 7 things here, but for me, key thing is it protects your investment, which is a huge investment when you're buying a property. Protects you as a new owner and the previous owner, and it's a one-time fee, and it lives the entire time you own the home. Unlike the lender's title policy, where you have to repurchase it every time you refinance or get a new loan on the property. So again, just kind of wanted to review this with the Utah people. So section 6.2, it's in the contract. Let your seller know if they negotiate out, or if you have a buyer and the seller negotiate out a contract, I would highly suggest that they review why it's important to have owner's title policy. If you have any questions, I am here. Okay?
Cool.
Thanks.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
email you that PDF.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All
Did
right.
you say that they don't have to have it?
No, it's optional. So owner's title policy is optional in the state of Utah.
Oh, I thought they had to.
Nope. So it's an optional thing. If you look in the section 6.2, it kind of talks about it being
No.
optional.
The seller pay for
That's
it?
life
Seller
insurance?
always is defaulted to pay it, and then it can be negotiated out of the
Is that what you're talking
contract by the seller. But section 6.2, it says it's an optional fee, the seller agrees to pay for it. Pretty much is what that section says.
So it's like,
Yes.
So it's optional, but it's not really because it's in the contract.
so the
Yeah.
seller
But it is.
probably like doesn't want to. Like,
So the
extra money.
seller doesn't want to pay for it, they can let you know as the agent, hey, I don't want to pay for this.
Yeah.
Then you have to do an addendum to take it off the contract.
Oh,
But in California, it's required to have both policies, where it's not in the state of Utah. So if they do negotiate it out, or if you represent a buyer and the seller negotiate it out, I just would recommend discussing the benefit with your buyer on why to have the title policy. Because it does protect them from liens, judgments for previous owners, it protects them from a plethora of things in regards to title transfers. So I go into that with our PR class, so definitely tune into that class later on. But something to keep in mind because it's come up twice in the past week. So
Perfect.
Thank you.
awesome, thank you guys.
Okay, thanks, Crystal. All right, we're gonna get going here. So, in fact, let me get my screen share going again here on this. Swine. Okay, how are you? All right, here we go. So,
Even at home, like.
so where we had left off yesterday is we were talking about what gets in the way of people buying or selling. And we talked about how that there's something that has to happen in order for them to be ready to buy. Do you remember what that term is called?
Crystallization.
Wow, good job. I'm impressed. All right, so crystallization. So the whole thing of what we are trying to accomplish. And just keep in mind as we go through and we talk about this, that the whole thing we are trying to do in what I've trained you yesterday and what we're working on today is all about causing crystallization. Because until they do it, they're not going to buy or they're not going to sell. But as soon as they crystallize, then they will buy and sell. Now, just as a reminder, the way that this all works is information is stored in 3 discrete locations. So you got the pictures in one area, the feelings in another area, and the decisions in another. Now I wrote that backwards. I usually do that. So let me actually fix that. All right. So the decisions here, and I'll show you why I switched that in a minute. And the feelings here. So the pictures, decisions, and feelings are all stored in these discrete locations. Our job is to get them to reintegrate. Now, what we've been talking about is nobody's going to buy or nobody's going to sell until they crystallize. Well, then how do people get people to buy or sell that have not been trained in this? Because I'll tell you, there are very, very few people who are trained in what I'm going to be showing you guys today. So but yet people buy and sell all the time. And I'm making the statement, nobody buys or sells until they crystallize. So how does that happen?
Sometimes circumstances,
Okay, what do you mean?
they have to move, or they have too many kids all of a sudden, there's no room in the house,
Okay, good. So, but how are they going to crystallize though?
They do it on their own.
How?
I don't know, weighing different.
They crystallize based on affects them.
It starts with percolation and then it goes from there until it comes into a solid idea.
Okay, good. Good. I'm glad you're making the connection. So here's what I would say is to you is the way that it happens without this process that I'm teaching you, because it would be arrogant for me to say that this is the only way that you can ever get somebody to buy or sell. And it would be wrong because people do it all the time without being trained in the process of how to create crystallization. But the way that it happens is through a term that's called information loading. Now, so think of it this way. When you're watching a sporting event and you see all these beer commercials or whatever, ultimately that's information loading. They're loading you with information so that when it comes, well, let's do chips. You watch a sporting event and you see an advertisement for potato chips. And you go to the grocery store. What's the first, if I said you go buy some potato chips, what's the first kind that comes to your mind?
Doritos.
Doritos is the most common answer that I hear. What did you say, Trevor?
I said barbecue chips.
Okay, but
Go with the favorite.
I have taught this class for 15 years, and for 15 years I say, what's the potato chips that come to mind? The number one answer that I have gotten is Doritos. Well, the reason for that is because they are really good at information loading you. So so how would a buyer information load in the market?
Looking at houses on their own.
That's right. It's just looking at houses. So without this process, how do you get somebody to crystallize?
They find the home and then just hit you up.
Oh, I wish it were that easy.
Okay.
I wish it were that easy.
You give them access.
What ends up happening is you end up showing lots and lots of properties. So let me give you a quick story on that. I had a guy that I was working with he worked for Wendy's, the fast food store Wendy's. He worked for Wendy's and he was moving here from Florida. He was like an area manager or something for Wendy's. He was moving here from Florida and we had done as much preliminary stuff before he got here. Now this was before I was trained in what I'm going to teach you guys in. So I'm going to tell you 2 different stories of 2 different buyers real quick. So this guy was before I had been trained in what I'm going to show you guys. And he was coming from Florida. We had done as much preliminary stuff, meaning I'd sent him properties and stuff online. Well, he comes into town and he was going to be here for, I don't remember how many days, 3 or 4 days. And then his wife was going to fly in. So his job was to come in and narrow down the properties. And then when she got here, he would show her the top, whatever, 3 or 4. We started in Draper and we went to the very first house. And in fact, I learned a new term from him because this particular house we went to, he goes, "Oh, this house has a frog." And I was like, "A frog?" Like thinking like ribbit frog kind of a thing. I'm like, I didn't notice a frog. What are you talking about? And he said, "Oh, well, like over the garage." I'm like, "A frog over the garage?" Like I was way confused. And yes, frog stands for finished room over garage. I was like, oh, I've never heard that term before. So have you guys ever heard that before? A frog? Yeah. So anyway, he said the home had a frog, and I was like, oh, okay. But it finished room over the garage. Well, so we look at this house, and he's like, I really like this one. We proceeded then over the next 2 days to probably look at 50 houses, at least 50, might have been 60, but somewhere between 50 and 60 houses. Guess what house they ended up buying? The one with the frog. Yep, the very, very first house we looked at. But it took looking at 50 to 60 houses before he could make that decision. See, what had to happen is he had to crystallize. The way that without this process, you get people to crystallize is you go show them 50, 60 houses. Does that sound exciting, Jane? So ultimately, what I'm trying to do is save you time to not have to go do that. Now, not long after that, I went and got trained in this process that I'm showing you guys in. And I came back and when I got back, so I had gone to the Bay Area, spent 3 days in being trained on this process. I came back, I was so excited about it. And I was telling my wife how awesome it is. We sat down and I said, let me show you how it works. And I start taking her through it. And as I started to take her through it, she goes, this is weird. And I was like, okay. She's like, if somebody did that with me, I'd be like, I don't want to work with that person. So like all of a sudden I was panicked because I was thinking like, uh-oh. Now, I called up the guy that trained me in this and I said to him, I must be doing something wrong because I got home from California. I sat down with my wife and I said, all right, I'm going to take you through this process. And she told me it was weird and she wouldn't like it if somebody did that. And I was panicked. And he said, well, did you get permission? And I said, no, I don't have to get permission to ask my wife questions. And he said, no, you do. For this to work, you have to get permission. So now let's pause for a minute. Yesterday, when I had Trevor come up here, you guys probably didn't catch this, but the first thing I asked him is, are you okay talking about this in front of the group and me asking you some questions? See, I was getting permission from him. So when you're going to do this process with a client, the first thing you have to do is get permission. Now I'm going to give you a script for that in a minute here, but the first thing you got to do is get permission from them to do it. And here's what it sounds like. Now I'm going to give you a copy of it, but this is what it sounds like. In order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. Some of the questions may feel personal, maybe things you haven't considered. Is that going to be okay? They're going to say yes, and then we can go into the process, which I'll show you here in just a minute. But just keep in mind, the first thing that has to happen is permission. Well, after that, I was a little tentative to actually do this with a real buyer because now the first experience after being trained in it is my wife telling me, this is weird. So I'm hesitant, but I get an opportunity and I have this client come in. I can still picture in my office that I was in, where I was sitting, where they were sitting. They sat down and I said, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you some questions. They may feel personal, maybe things you haven't considered. Is that going to be okay? They said yes. I said, okay, describe for me your ideal home. If you remember yesterday, that's what I did with Trevor. Describe for me your ideal home. So I said to these people, describe for me your ideal home. They started describing the ideal home. And we haven't talked about this, but as they do it, you're going to take notes. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute as well. You're going to take notes on what they're talking about. And I'm sitting there taking notes. And finally, we get done with the process. Now, remember, where we're trying to go to is from this. And I didn't draw it this way yesterday, but I'll do it today, is features and benefits. See, they come in talking about the features. And if you remember, the reason they're doing that is because how your brain works, 10% of it is conscious, 90% is unconscious. And so they're talking at this level, which is where the features are. So they start telling me about all the features. Well, our job is to ask enough questions that we can drill down from the features into getting what the benefits are. So what we want to find is what's really the benefit that they're looking for. And I did. I landed on what those benefits are. So from there, then the next thing that we're going to do after we've taken them through this process, and I'll give you the script on this, is the next thing we're going to do is say, let me tell you how I work. And that script is going to sound like this. Let me tell you how I work. I'm going to look at every home on the market in your price range, but I'm only going to show you the ones that actually meet your needs. In my experience, I'm going to have to look at 10 houses to find one that would work for you. So if we go look at 3 or 4 houses, I will have previewed 30 to 40 homes. I'm willing to commit the time to do that, provided that during the time we're working together, you'll commit to working exclusively with me. And they'll say yes. Then we have them sign the buyer broker. After they've signed the buyer broker, I'm going to say, all right, we're going to go out and look at some houses then on whatever day. And when we go out to look at houses, we're going to find a home for you to buy. So when we go out there, I'm going to ask you after every single home we look at, do you want to write an offer on this house? And a no is just as important to me as a yes. So keep that in mind. I am not a pushy salesperson. So when I go and talk to a buyer and I tell them after every house we look at, I'm going to ask you, do you want to write an offer? A no is just as important to me as a yes. So I don't want you to feel pressure. This is what I tell them. I don't want you to feel pressured, but I do want to make sure that I'm not wasting your time. Remember yesterday that we don't listen, we waste their time. I use that by saying, I don't want to waste your time going out and looking at properties that don't work for you. So I'm going to ask you after every property, you want to write an offer. A no is just as important to me as a yes. Now, I've just set it up to be able to do that. Okay. So this first couple that I sat down with, we jump in the car to go out and look at properties this first time. We pull up to the first house. And I remember we pulled up, we parked right in front of the house, not in the driveway, like just in the street. And I remember we parked and there wasn't a sign up because this was a brand new home to the market. So there's no sign up. And as we park, so I'm driving, the husband's sitting right here and the wife is right behind me in the back seat. So the husband's sitting here, we pull up and park. He turns to me and says, is this the house, pointing to the one that was just outside his door? And I said, yeah, it's right there. And he then, so now picture, he's sitting right here. He turns over his shoulder to look at his wife and he goes, this is it. And she goes, yeah. And I'm sitting there going, no way. Like this, my experience had been, you got to show 10, 12, 20 properties before somebody buys. Well, we haven't even gotten out of the car yet. And he's like, this is it. And I was like, well, hold on, let's go inside. Don't get too excited yet. Because, you know, who knows? So I remember we walked to the front door. There was no key box on the front door. So I had to walk to the side door, which is where the key box was, which would then take us right into the kitchen of the house. So I remember we walked into the house. And as soon as we walked in the kitchen, she was like, yeah, this is the place. This is the place. And I was like, all right, well, hold on. Like, I've got 3 more properties we're going to look at. So like, don't get too excited. Now, I would never do that today. Like today, if I pull up and they go, this is it, I'm going to go, great, let's go inside. When we walk inside and they say, this is the place, I'd be like, great, let's cancel the other showings, go back to the office, write the offer. Like, that's how I would do it today. But I didn't trust that it would really work this simply. So I said, well, hold on, we got these other 3. Let's go take a look at them. So we went and looked at the other 3 properties and they're like, no, we want the first one. I went back and wrote the offer. I have had many, many times using this process where the people will buy the first house. So here's the difference. That first guy that I had to show 50 or 60 to, if I would have said to him on that first house with the frog, if I would have said to him, do you want to write an offer on it? He would have said, well, no, we need to see everything else first. But the reason is because he hadn't crystallized. Once they crystallize, they're empowered and ready to make a decision. Had I taken him through this process first and then went and looked at that, very likely he would have said, yeah, let's write the offer. Now, part of that is on you of listening to what they're saying to be able to then go find the property. And in today's market, finding the property might be difficult, but finding the property that meets their needs. So I just called it benefits over here on this right here, but we could also say needs. Okay, so that's why we call this class needs analysis, is we are doing an analysis to figure out what their needs are or ultimately what the benefits are. Now, there are 15 benefit words, and I'm going to give those to you here in a little bit, but there are 15 benefit words that ultimately for every feature that they give us. So let me just say up here, if they talk about the kitchen, that's a feature. Well, tied to that feature is going to be a benefit. So think of it as how we're doing this is we're going from the feature of the kitchen to how do you use it, who's going to use it, what are you going to do with it, and then from there we're going to tie it to a benefit. Now, here's the interesting thing, and some of you as we talk today are going to have this thought, and please bring it up every time you have the thought, because I got to help you with it and you're not the only one thinking it. But keep in mind this, features have price tags, benefits do not. Meaning, you can meet the benefit in any price range. So somebody starts describing this kitchen that you're just like, well, yeah, you can't afford that kitchen, or that kitchen doesn't exist. Keep in mind, that's the feature. And the feature does have a price tag. But there's a benefit they're looking for in that feature that is going to exist in the property they buy. Now, let me say it this way. In terms of the benefits, they buy in ones and, or excuse me, not ones. I don't know where that came from. They buy in twos and threes. So what they're looking for when you, and now remember, we're talking mostly buyers to begin with here. The buyer of a house is looking for 2 to 3 benefits in that house. If the property has the 2 or 3 benefits that they're looking for, they'll buy it. If it doesn't, they won't. So let me explain to you what I mean. Sometimes what will happen is you'll have a husband and a wife. And the husband will say, whatever my wife wants, I don't really care. It's if she's happy, we'll take it. Well, then you go out and you go to look at properties and she falls in love and he's like, well, no, I don't really like it. Okay, well, you may or may not say this, but I thought just as long as she liked it, you were good. Well, yeah, but the garage isn't big enough. See, what they're saying to you when that happens, what they're saying to you is, for the wife, it has the 2 or 3 benefits she's looking for. For the husband, it doesn't. If you can find the 2 or 3 benefits and get them to crystallize on it, see, that's the key, is if they can crystallize on these 2 or 3 benefits, they'll buy. But if it only has one, if they, let's say that for that person, there needs to be 3. So when I say 2 or 3, each person's going to be a little different. Some people will be fine with only 2. Others are going to need 3. So whatever it is, but as soon as you land on the 2 or 3 benefits, and if the property has those 2 or 3 benefits, they'll buy. And if it doesn't, they won't. So here's what I'm saying to you. When you go out and show somebody properties and they don't want to write an offer, in essence, what they're telling you is the property doesn't have at least one of the benefits that they need in order for them to be willing to make a decision to purchase. So your job then is to figure out what those are. That's ultimately what we are doing. What we're talking about today is how do you figure out what those are? And then going back to this of how do I get this to reintegrate to equal the crystallization that we were talking about? That's what we're trying to do. We got to get them to crystallize on 2 or 3 benefits. And once they do, they're empowered to buy. Okay. So how do we do it? So that's what we're going to talk about now. But before I jump to that, any question? Are you clear on what we're talking about? If you are, say yes.
Yes.
Okay, that was kind of weak. So what questions do you have? Or on Zoom, if you guys have any questions. Unmute or throw it in the chat box or something.
Okay, give me some examples of benefits that you would relate to a kitchen.
Okay, good. Thank you. So kitchen. On the kitchen, here's what I have found is one of the benefit words is love. Okay, so what they're looking for is love. What you will see a lot of times in the kitchen is the benefit they're looking for is love. And what I mean by that, so here's how it works. So an example of this would be that you have somebody that says, the home needs to have a really big, nice kitchen. And then from there, we're going to say, okay, well, tell me more. And they're going to talk more about the kitchen and ultimately think of it this way. This is probably the best way of saying it. The first thing we're going to get them to do, the first thing I want them doing is picturing it. So that's going to be number 1. Number 2 is we're going to get them to tell us the decisions they've made about it. And then number 3 is we'll get them to give us the feelings. The feelings is where the benefit's going to show up. But here's the way to think about it is they're going to say they want this big kitchen. So I'm going to then go to the decisions they've made. So who's going to use the kitchen? What's the layout going to look like? And how often do you use it? What kinds of things do you do in the kitchen? So they're going to start telling me about that. Then ultimately I'm going to say, so what does having that kitchen like that mean to you? And then what will happen a lot of times is if a mom will say, well, I want to have this kitchen because when the kids get home from school, they'll sit down at the counter and start working on their homework, and I'll be doing dishes or whatever, cooking dinner or whatever they're doing. And it's just a way for me to reconnect with my kids and find out how their day went and talk to them. Well, so ultimately what they're looking for then is a way to show their kids how much they love them. And so that's where you would then land on. So what you're looking for then in this kitchen is a place to show your kids how much you love them. Or maybe it's they like to cook and that they have people come over and that's how they show their love to people. Or let's go to what Swen talked about, entertainment yesterday, right? You said that?
Yeah.
So maybe it's, I need this kitchen because we like to entertain. So entertainment or entertaining can be another benefit that they are looking for, is if they are looking to entertain and they want the kitchen for that purpose, then that would be the benefit. Does that help? So yeah, and I'm going to give you more examples of that as we go through this and talk about it and show you what that looks like. Okay. But ultimately, keep in mind, what we are trying to create is what? Oh, you guys are so good. Usually it takes like, yeah, never mind. They never get it. You guys are good. So good. So yeah, we're trying to create crystallization. Crystallization occurs when we get the reintegration of the pictures, the decisions, and the feelings, and we can land on 2 or 3 benefits that they're looking for. Once that happens, they're ready to go and they're ready to buy. Okay. So, all right. So how do we do it? So now let's get into that. So the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to use something called directives. Now, remember back here what I just showed you. So let me bounce back there real quick. That there's a 1, 2, and a 3. So think of what we're doing first is to get them picturing it. Okay. So the directives, and we could do it this way and just even put here that this is tool number 1. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use directives. Think about directives as being like the director of a movie. The director of a movie is there to make sure, oh, no, do it again, start over, try that again. Like they're in charge and they're guiding, basically. Think of it that way. Your job is to guide. Now, remember when I had Trevor up here yesterday and I said to Trevor, describe for me your ideal home. And then he started to talk. And then after, so that's the directive is, so let me write that one down first. Describe for me your ideal home. Okay. So I'm going to say, describe for me your ideal home. Once he had done that, then what I used was some prompters. So that this is still part of tool number 1 is prompters. And the prompters were, what else? Keep going. Say more. Things like that, okay? The idea of the prompters is just to have them keep talking. Now remember, the way you and I have been trained to communicate, typically what we do when we are communicating with somebody is we would want to say, so do it with me real quick again, Trevor. Describe for me your ideal home and then just say whatever.
I'm asking you.
No, I asked you. Describe for me your ideal home.
4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, single level, and some land.
So typically what we would want to do right now, the way you and I have been trained to communicate is we would say, you said single level, 4 bedrooms, and how big of land did you want? Or whatever. We start to say, how big did you want the bedrooms to be? Or like, we'll start asking more questions or even giving him options of, well, did you want to be in the valley or up in the mountains? Did you want a red house or a blue house? Like that's typically the way we have been trained to communicate. But you'll notice what I'm telling you to do is not that at all. It's instead to use prompters. So once he quits talking, and that's why I like using that pass the baton marker back and forth that we did yesterday, is because what I'm doing is when he quits talking, so he said 4 bedrooms, how many baths? 3 baths. I don't remember what you said.
Single level.
Yeah, I'm teaching you guys real good. Listen really carefully, and I didn't listen. But single level. So what I'm going to do then is once he does that, picture that he's handing me the baton. I've taken it. then I'm going to just say, hey, Trevor, you're doing a really good job. I'm getting a good picture of what you're talking about. Tell me more. So notice the other piece that we're going to do with this is we're going to use, I'm just going to put it as PF, but that stands for positive feedback. So I want to give positive feedback. Typically the way that, if you guys are on the phone prospecting, I would call it repeat and affirm. But for this, the reason I don't call it repeat and affirm is because hopefully they've said a whole bunch of things. And so you're not going to repeat back everything that they've said. And you're going to be taking notes, which I'll show you that in a minute. You're going to be taking notes of what they're talking about, which in essence is your way of repeating. They know you're listening because you're taking notes. Okay. So, but I'm going, you want to go, oh, that's great. Or, wow, interesting. As they're talking, that's all positive feedback. Wow. Interesting. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah. Oh, makes sense. Like you're going to want to do that, but then you're going to say, tell me more, keep going. What else? And you're going to keep doing that until they say, I don't know what else to say. That's about it. I can't think of anything else. That's what you're wanting to do. So picture it this way. What I'm doing is just really letting them talk. So I want to say, describe for me your ideal home. He does. Then I'm going to go, okay, sure. What else? And then he would go, and this is where you will notice at that, typically you say, describe for me your ideal home. They start to talk to you at this level up here, where we talked about yesterday is the 10%. They're going to start to talk to you at that level. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2-car garage. And then you say, okay, what else? This is when they go, oh, like at an unconscious level, they start to go, oh, they really want to know. And so it'll force them to now start to really think. So picture it as what we're doing is we're getting them to picture what they want in the home. They're having to stop and think about it. Now, to tie that back to all the percolation that they've had, where they've been percolating, thinking about this stuff, all of a sudden now is when they start to go, oh, well, yeah, so I would want to have a big kitchen and I would want to have a family room and it needs to have a big backyard with a lot of trees and a garden and you, okay, sure, that's great. What else? And then they tell you more and you go, awesome. Hey, I'm getting a good picture. Keep going. And they keep going. And eventually they're going to go, I don't know what else to tell you. Or they're going to say, that's about it. Or, God, that'd be perfect if we could get that. Once they do that, you now know you're done with tool number 1. Okay. So let me show you what that looks like real quick. So what you're going to be doing with that while they're doing that is, so you're going to take notes. And I'm going to give you a paper that you're going to use for this here. But basically it looks like that. So think of it as a grid that I'm going to give you. And in fact, a lot of times I'll call this filling the grid. So when I use tool number 1, which is describe for me your ideal home, I'm then going to take notes of what they talk about. Now you will notice on here, on the grid that I give you, they're not labeled. Meaning it doesn't say kitchen, backyard, garage, family room. Like I don't have it listed that way. Now, the reason I don't do that, so the reason those are not there is because I only want to talk. Remember I said yesterday, is it okay if we let them buy the house they want? This is what I mean by that. The reason we don't have, we're playing tic-tac-toe now, apparently. I don't know what happened there. How did I lose the rest of the box that I had there? But we're making it about them. I thought you weren't coming today. So we're making it about them. And so the way that we make this about them is, because here's the problem. If on this grid, which is it hot in here again today?
It's even toasted. Not as bad as yesterday, but
It's not as bad, but I think I'm already on as cool as it will go. So I don't know what to do.
it does work. Did you find out for sure?
No, I didn't.
You're like, it might have.
I think they're just there. They psychologically go, oh, okay, you turned it down. We're gonna be okay. Yeah. Okay, so the reason we don't have anything filled in there is because if we did, we would then talk about that. Well, what if that's not important to them? See, meaning like, let me tell you guys another quick story about somebody using this. And this one wasn't me personally, but it was an agent that I trained in it. So if I had written up here in this box kitchen, you would 100% sit down with your client and say, all right, so Mary, tell me about the kitchen. And guess what they're going to do if I said that? Tell me about the kitchen. What are they going to do? They're going to tell me about the kitchen. What if the kitchen's not important to them? Let me say that differently. What if the kitchen's not important to them and it's important to you? You're going to get them to talk about the kitchen, and then guess what you talk about when you go to the house? Because why? Because it's important to you, which is then creates for them they're not listening to me. Why do they keep talking about the kitchen? The only way we're going to fix this is to go get another agent. And then that's what they'll do. So we only talk about up here what they bring up. So if they don't bring it up, so that's the reason when I give you this grid, it doesn't have anything written in there. So what you're going to do, so now let me just show you what it looks like. So Trevor, describe for me your ideal home.
Okay. Half-acre lot.
So as he's talking, I would go half acre.
Let's see, single level, 5 bedrooms, 3 baths, decent sized kitchen, 2-car garage, extra garage in the back for toys, RV parking.
So notice, as he's giving it to me, I'm just going to be taking quick notes of it. Now, all that matters is that you can read this. They don't need to be able to read it, as long as it makes sense to you. So you'll notice he said single level. I wrote down 1 level because that was faster than writing single level. So you will come up with your own shorthand. So, okay, so then I would say, okay, hey, that's great. What else? And then he would tell me more. And as he tells me more, so let's pretend that I said, okay, what else? Say something more about the half acre.
Okay, let's see. I want the land to be.
So now notice.
Trees on the half acre.
So notice I said, okay, what else? And then he said trees.
Yeah, I want there to be trees on the half acre. I want the garage to be tall so that it can fit a big trailer in it. I don't want white cabinets in the kitchen because I think white's boring.
So notice what I would be doing is whatever feature he's talking about, I'm just going to keep going back to that. So, okay, great. What else?
Let's see. The blades of grass have to be at least 4 inches tall.
Oh my god.
So,
I'm just kidding.
I want evergreen.
so 4 inches. Okay. So, but notice whatever he says, I'm just going to be writing notes about it. Okay.
And they'll probably describe what's more important, like more specifically, so you just add it to that box.
Yeah. So that's the key is when I just say what else, if he talks about a new feature, which like there, he said something about the backyard. So then I just went to the backyard, although he had said extra garage in the backyard over here. So I could have done it over there. It doesn't really matter is I guess kind of the point that I want you to see, but you're going to take notes based on what they say. And then I would just say, what else? Keep going. Tell me more. And eventually they're going to run out of things to say and they're going to go, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, God, if you could find what we've talked about, be perfect. Now I'm going to go, okay, good. So now that he's done that, I can look at this and say, okay, I've completed tool number 1. So think of it this way. Tool number 1 is all about filling out this grid and getting as much information as you can filled in on the grid. Okay. That's tool number 1. And ultimately, just to tie it together to make sure, it is about getting them to picture it. I'm getting them to picture in their mind what it is they're wanting. Now that we've done that, now actually let me pause for a minute. Let me say one other thing on this. Once I've done that, if we had, let's just say that Trevor went through and told me more about the half acre, which really I could have done half acre, this backyard and all of the garage that could be in one. So, but again, it doesn't matter. So let's say that I'd gotten all this information. He told me more about the kitchen. Hadn't said much about the garage, or let's say maybe the extra garage, and he had given me this on the garage. I'm going to then look at this. Once he says that's about it, I'm going to look at this to see, do I have any boxes that don't have a lot of information? And I'm looking at this right now, I'd say, yeah, I don't have anything here, 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 or here. So before I go to tool number 2, I would just do it. I'm going to just check in to make sure he's given me everything that he wanted to. Okay. So I would just say, hey, Trevor, you mentioned single level. Say more about that.
Yeah, it's just nice to have. That's why I need the half acre as well, because the house is going to be big and take up a lot of space. If it's just one level and still that size, it's just nice to have all the area right there.
Okay, sure. What else? And it's okay.
In case, let's say I ever have my parents move in with me. I mean, they start to get old. They don't have to go up and down stairs. I'll have extra room.
Okay, good. But so now let me pause for a minute. Notice where we're starting to. Notice we've just gone from single level to what? And why would he? So why would he be concerned about his parents moving in and it being on one level? Ultimately, that's what I'm talking about, of how we would go from a feature to getting to a benefit. Part of what he's looking. Now, this one is probably going to be multi-beneficial, which I'll say more about that in a minute. But ultimately, notice how I'm going from single level to it's because my parents might move in, and if they're old and they're not going to be able to do stairs, I want to be able to take care of. See, that's what I mean by getting to the benefit. Okay, but at this point, don't jump the gun to get to that. Just kind of slow down and let the process happen. So, meaning, even though I know I'm starting to get somewhere with it, in this process, I wouldn't say anything other than I would have made a note here of parents to remind me. Okay. So then I go, okay, what else? Just say nothing.
That's about it.
That's about it. Okay, great. Then I would go to the next. So you mentioned 5 bedrooms. Tell me more about 5 bedrooms. And then he's going to talk about, and like I said, sometimes they may just go, well, I need one for me. I need one for my dog. I need one for the cat. I need one, whatever. I mean, they're just going to say, sometimes it may be that simple. I've got 3 kids and we want to have an extra bedroom for an office. So that's it. Okay, great. But what is he telling me if that's what he says? If I say, tell me more about the bedrooms, and he goes, well, we need one for each of the kids and an office and me.
They're not that important.
Yeah, then it's,
Specifically not that important.
yeah, I mean, he needs them, but it's not like that's the driving influence of the decision making, meaning like you got to have them, but it's probably not anything specific about them. It's kind of like you just got to have them. Okay, so now let me go to the story I was going to tell you. I had an agent that sat down with a buyer and said, okay, describe for me the ideal home. And this is what the guy said, he said, it needs to be a 10-minute walk from the University of Utah. And yeah, that's about it. And the agent was like, all right, well, tell me more. It just really needs to be a 10-minute walk from my office at the University of Utah. Okay. So the agent finishes, calls me up on the phone, which you guys are welcome to do this too. Calls me up on the phone and goes I don't know what to do. I couldn't get any information out of this guy. All he said is, I need a 10-minute walk from the University of Utah, my office there. He was a professor. So what we found out later was that he was a professor at the University of Utah. And essentially he was doing some research there that he would spend from sun up to sundown. The only thing he needed a place for was to go take a shower and sleep. That was it. And so his concern was he wanted it to be a 10-minute walk because he didn't have a car. He just would ride a bike. But in the winter, he didn't want to have to walk in the snow for more than 10 minutes to get. So it needed to be a 10-minute walk. But before we found that out, the agent calls me and says, what do I do? Well, here's what you do. In that scenario, I said, go find properties that are in his price range that are 10-minute walk from his office. So I figure out what that is, then go show him 2 or 3 properties that meet that. Well, the agent goes and looks and comes back and says, in his price range, I can find 1. And they said it's like a studio condo. Like it was a condo with no bedrooms really, just like a studio kind of apartment kind of a thing. They said, I just can't imagine he's going to like it. And I said, go show it to him. And then here's what you're going to do. So here's what the process would have looked like. You go show it to him. If he doesn't want to buy it, then you say, okay, tell me what didn't work, because now remember, I don't want to waste your time. I'm constantly using that. I don't want to waste your time going and look at properties that don't work for you. So I just said, go show him. And if he doesn't want to buy it, say, I don't want to waste your time. Tell me what didn't work on this. What needs to change? She goes and she shows him this property. And after getting done showing the property, the guy goes, yeah, this is great. Let's write the offer. And so she wrote the offer. And then that's where, like I said, what we found out after the fact is he wasn't ever going to be there except for to take a shower and sleep. That was it. So he didn't care. It didn't matter. He was hardly going to be there at all. He just needed somewhere to go to take a shower and to get some sleep. That was it. See, that's the point of this is what we're going to do is we are going to use this to find out what's important to them without me projecting onto them what I think they should buy. So even though we jokingly say, and I always do say, is it okay if we let them buy the house they want? And we always kind of laugh. Well, of course we're going to. Truth is, if you really look at it, you project onto them your thoughts of what you think they should do. And this allows us to stay out of that by just saying, hey, describe for me your ideal home. Wow, what else? Tell me more. Keep going. Awesome. Good for you. Oh, perfect. Wow. Oh, yeah, that'd be exciting. Sure. Oh, yeah, tell me more. Keep going. That's interesting. Wow. That's what we're doing to fill this grid. Once they've done that, then I'm just going to look at it to see, do I need to try to fill in gaps? And if I do, then I'll go to Trevor and say, hey, you mentioned the backyard and the grass being 4 inches long. Tell me more about the 4-inch long grass. And then, or whatever. I'm going to say, tell me more about the backyard. Well, I don't want to have to mow the lawn and blah, whatever it is. He's going to tell me okay, sure. What else? Okay. And I'm just going to keep filling in details. Okay. Everybody good with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Next thing then. Once I have done that, then I'm going to go here over to tool number 2. So tool number 2 here is what we would call modifiers. Modifiers are who, what, when, where, how. Now notice I left one out. What did I leave out?
Why?
Yeah, the why. And I did that on purpose. The reason we don't use why as part of the modifiers is because modifiers is we're going to use we're going to use the why question as basically to get to the feelings. Why is what's going to connect. So far, just to make sure you guys are getting what we're talking about here. The directives are about the pictures. These modifiers are now what are the decisions they've already made about it, which is why we're going to ask who, what, when, where, what, who, what, when, where, how. The why question brings in the feelings to it. Okay. So the why is what's going to bring in the feelings, but don't go there yet. So just hold tight with me for a minute. So now here's what I'm going to do. So the next step on this, and in fact, how did you say it, Chad, yesterday about features, the advantages?
Features are what it is.
Did you call it
advantages or what
advantages?
it does?
I couldn't remember the word.
Benefits are what it does.
Yeah. So think of this as that it's that same concept of the features is the directives. Now we're going to get to what are the advantages of it. So, but we're doing it by asking who, what, when, where, how questions. So essentially, this is what it would look like. Because I would be saying, so Trevor, you mentioned, I just realized, sorry, back up, pause for 1 minute. I forgot one key piece. Before we do the tools, tool number 2, we're going to have them rank them. Okay. So there's a key piece before we get to modifiers. Now, remember, we're looking for 2 or 3 benefits. Okay. So back here on this, I am going to, after we have filled out the grid, I'm going to say to Trevor, of everything we've talked about, what are the 2 or 3 that are most important? So just either are you making all this stuff up so far as it go? All right, well, keep making it up then. I should have told you not to make it up, but that's okay. Keep making it up.
Important things is lot space, like how big the land is.
Okay.
And making sure the cabinets aren't white.
Okay. Cool. Okay, now notice, how many did he give me?
2.
Now, notice, remember I said they come in 2s and 3s. Now, what you're going to have a tendency to want to do is to say, okay, Trevor, of everything we've talked about, which one is most important? And then he would say then the lot size. Okay. And what's number 2? And then he says, no white cabinets in the kitchen. And then you're going to say, and what's number 3? Well, so now I'm forcing him to come up with a 3rd. Versus if I say, give me the 2 or 3, notice he only gave me 2. That's the key thing with this. So the reason you're going to say, what are the 2 or 3 most important is because then that way they decide if it's 2 or 3. What if there's 4? That, yeah, here's how. But by me saying, what are the 2 or 3, Trevor's going to go the yard, the kitchen, and can't decide if it's the backyard or the garage. I mean, they're both pretty important. I mean, can I have 4? Like, that's what they'll do. If 4 are important, that's what, but by saying, give me the 2 or 3, you're basically saying, just tell me what's most important. And so notice I ended up with only 2, which is great. What that means is there's only 2 that are going to be, he only needs 2 benefits and he'll be ready to buy. Okay. So now that we've done that, now we can go over here to tool number 2. So now on tool number 2, what I'm going to do is this. Essentially, I'm going to take from this here, number 1 that he had, and I'm going to work with that particular box now. Okay, so I'm just going to throw that one up here and we're going to just say it was the ½ acre. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is at this point, I'm going to ask these questions about the ½ acre. Now, how I like to do it is this. This is the way I like to do it. And it's just personal preference. You don't have to do it this way. But the way I like to do it is I will say, okay, Trevor, picture yourself in the backyard. Tell me what you see. Now, the reason I do that is because I want to get them picturing it. So here's the next piece of this. In terms of these modifiers in tool number 2, you're going to need to ask between 5 and 7 of these questions that either start with who, what, when, where, or how of him about that feature. And when I say 5 to 7, they could be directives too. So either a directive or a modifier. So I'm actually starting with a directive, which is tell me about, is another one of the directives. So I'm saying to him, so Trevor, picture yourself. So look at it this way, as I'm giving him an instruction. Picture yourself in the backyard. Tell me what you see. Then he's going to just start to tell me. So do that. Just keep making it up, I guess.
I'm sitting on a balcony, my balcony off the back, and
then notice I would just be doing taking notes on this again. Balcony, okay.
And then there's grass in the backyard.
4 inches long.
It's 4 inches long. There's trees around like the edges so that the neighbors can't see me in the fence. And then there's nobody behind me, and it just goes up into the hills.
So notice I would just be taking notes on that. Now, here's what you're going to do then next. So the next piece of this is based on what he's said so far. You guys help me out. What questions could we ask that are who, what, when, where, or how about what he's said so far? Well, I mean, obviously the first one is who's going to be using the back. So Trevor, who's going to be using the backyard?
I will be using the backyard to play like games, sports.
Okay, so then I would just be writing that down. Now, if you have to flip the paper over to take more notes, then just do that. So, okay, so now based on that, he said playing games and sports. I would probably then go, oh, well, what kind of games and sports are you going to be doing?
Get some friends over, maybe like play some wiffle ball or pass the football around or set up the nets and play volleyball or stuff like that.
Okay, cool. So what other questions could we ask? Now, so think of it, the ideal way to do it is you kind of build on the reason I start with picture yourself there, tell me what you see, is then I can ask additional questions about what he's mentioned. So let me give you another example, and you guys think of some yourself too. But he brought up trees. Okay, so now I'm gonna, what are the decisions he's made? So you mentioned trees. What kind of trees?
Ooh.
See, and if it doesn't matter, they're gonna go, I don't know, it doesn't matter. I just want them to block out so the neighbors can't see. But if they want certain specific ones, they're going to go, oh, they got to be whatever.
Probably quakees or pine trees.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned surrounding the property. So how many are you picturing? So notice I just went to a how question.
Not a specific number, but like a decent amount, like not spread out too far, but not like overwhelming, obviously.
Okay, good. So what other questions could we ask him?
Mentioned he wanted it to be like back against the hills and no one behind him, so where would you want it to be?
Okay, good. So yeah, that would, so where do you picture this being? And then Robert threw one in. Let me see.
I like this house you're building. It's nice.
Yeah.
Very expensive.
Okay, so Robert said, asked, how often are you going to use the backyard?
Every weekend.
Every weekend. Okay, good. So now notice that's what I'm going to be doing is on this feature, and this is where I'm now going to be asking the who's going to use it, what are you going to use it for, when are you going to use it, where's it going to be, how often are you going to use it, all of those kinds of things. What kind of furniture are you going to buy? He mentioned the balcony. How big is the balcony going to be?
It's gonna be a 10 by 18 deck.
Okay, so then I'm just writing that down now. So notice all I'm doing is just getting this information. Now, I want to pause for a minute because Swen said, I like this house because what?
It's very expensive size building.
Okay, good. So remember though, I'm going to tie, so thank you for bringing that up. And I want you guys to, every time you have this thought, bring it up. Features have a price tag, but the benefits don't. So what I mean by that, because it is very normal to start to think, well, where am I going to find a house that fits exactly what he's talking about? You're not, and you don't need to, but you do need to find one that has the benefit that he's looking for. Because if you find the benefit, he'll buy it. So it doesn't have to have exactly 34 trees and that they all have to be manicured exactly perfect. And the deck doesn't have to be 18 by whatever he just said. Like it doesn't have to be all that stuff. But what does have to happen is that when he goes into that backyard, he needs to feel like whatever the benefit he's looking for in the backyard is being met. That's what, so now let me give you another quick example. And you've been to my house before, haven't you, Chad? I thought so. So let me tell you about when I bought the home that I live in. And so the reason I say that is Chad can back up what I'm about to say. Prior to buying the home that I'm in, my wife and I had started to look. So before I kind of told you the story of driving down this road, whatever. We had already decided we wanted to have a lot that was at least an acre. So we were like, our next house is going to be on a 1 acre lot. So here's part of why I say that. Trevor brought up, it needs to be on at least a half of an acre. Well, all of a sudden we go to, well, there's a price associated with a half an acre lot, right? We were saying we want to have a house that was on a 1 acre. Well, this is why you have to get into well, why do you want to have a 1 acre? What is important about 1 acre? And for me, it was like, I want to have room to have a basketball court. I want to be able to have the kids be able to go out and we can play catch. I want enough space that we can all do all those things. Well, so here's my house, and right outside of my backyard. So this is like, I'm on a cul-de-sac here, whatever this cul-de-sac is, and it's right here. But right outside of my backyard here's a little parking lot. Then there's a swimming pool here, tennis courts here, basketball court here, and a big open field right there. Well, why did I want 1 acre? Because I wanted to be able to go out and basically do all the stuff that's right here. Well, I'm not on a 1 acre. I'm on a 1/4 of an acre. But right outside of my backyard is this parking lot. And then there's a swimming pool, tennis court, basketball court, and a big field here, and a little playground thing here as well. But my point being, why did I want the 1 acre? Well, I wanted to be able to do all this stuff. Well, I bought a house that's not on 1 acre. Remember yesterday I said, people are going to say to you, or you're going to say buyers are liars. I would have been that buyer for you. They said they wanted 1 acre and then they went and bought a 1/4 of an acre. Well, the reason I did is because the benefit I was looking for was, which one of the benefit words is recreation. The benefit I was looking for was to go out and recreate in the backyard with my kids. And instead now, see, but here's the other side of it. What also goes with a 1 acre lot? What else do you get?
A lot of maintenance.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be out working in the yard the whole weekend or whatever. So for me, this was even better. Now, my wife still today would say to you, she wants a 1 acre. And I'm like, no, we got what we need right here. But my benefit's been met, hers isn't, I guess, with the 1 acre, because I'm like, I don't want to have to do all the work. But here's where I have succumbed to. In the event that I were to go buy another house on a 1 acre or more of a lot, I would have to have the agreement to my wife that we're paying somebody else to come do the yard work. I'm not doing it. I don't want to have to do the yard work. But here's the point. I got the benefit I was looking for in a 1/4 of an acre lot. Now, what if your price range was really cheap, but yet they're saying they want 1 acre?
You're sending them way out.
Finding them a place by a park or something where they still have access to land they can use.
Yeah, so you got to find out so let's say, let me give you the other one that I said. which I kind of already gave it away a little bit. The other thing, so when I was gone and trained in this, I mentioned to you guys I went to the Bay Area to be trained on it. And when I was there being trained on it, when somebody asked me in the class, describe for me the ideal home, I didn't make it up like Trevor has been. I was truthful, but I said, I want to have a swimming pool in my basement. Well, I don't have a swimming pool in my basement, but I do have one right outside the backyard. See, that's the whole point. When I say swimming pool in the basement, that's where, from what Swen said, you as an agent are going to be like, yeah, you can't afford a house that's going to have a pool in the basement. Like, but that's where you kind of get to this, well, yeah, these guys are unrealistic. Well, no, because there's a benefit that I wanted to have the pool. I didn't need a pool in my basement, but what I did want, though, is at the time, the house that I was living in, I would go drive to Gold's Gym to work out, and I would go swim, and I would drive 3 miles from my house to get to Gold's Gym, and in the winter, I would go swim, and I'd get out, and then I'd go leave the gym, and my hair was wet, so I'm freezing. I would go get in my car that was also freezing because it was cold, and so this is what was going through my head of, I would want a swimming pool in the basement because then I wouldn't have to, see, another benefit word, convenience. What I was looking for was convenience. See, it wasn't the pool in the basement wasn't what I wanted. It was convenience to working out. Now, guess how many times I've been to that pool and swam laps in 20 years? Yeah, maybe 5 times, like in 20. But that was like a huge, like, this is an important piece for me. I want to be like, for me, it was like, that's great. I can walk out. Here's the other thing. In the winter, it's not, the pool's not even open. So, but my need felt like it was being met, that benefit. Does that make sense? So that's what we're trying to do with this, is we're asking all of these questions here to figure out what are the pieces, how can we modify it if we need to? Meaning, if they're saying 1 acre, I have to first start with, what are you going to use the 1 acre for? Well, if what it is to go outside and play catch with the kids, then I could say to them, well, this would be another what question. What would your attitude be about having a park right next door? And then they'll go, oh, yeah, that would work. See, the problem is they haven't thought about it enough to think through. In their mind, it's no, we need 1 acre. But when you find out their price range, you kind of just have to come up with, okay, let's see if we can come up with some other solutions. What if there was a park next door? Oh, yeah, that would work. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the point of these modifiers. You're typically going to have to ask minimum of 5 to 7 and just try to build on it based upon what they've said. So who's going to use it? How often do you use it? Where is it going to be? What furniture is going to be in the room? What color is it be? What will the flooring look like? How much light would be? Like, it doesn't matter, but just ask questions to get them thinking through what decisions they've already made about it. Make sense? All right. Now that I've done that, then I can come over here to tool number 3. So tool 3 is what I like to call the tag. Okay. And the tag is, what does blank mean to you? Or what, I'm running out of space here. Or why is blank important? So now, watch what happens. So with Trevor, after I've asked at least the 5 to 7 questions, I know he's pictured it. We've talked about what he's looking for. I'm going to then say, so Trevor, what does having that backyard mean to you?
It means being able to enjoy my land in privacy.
Okay, so privacy is one of the benefit words. What you will find is typically, now I had a feeling that privacy was going to be it because he had said he wanted the trees so the neighbors couldn't see in. My guess was that would be about privacy. Okay. So privacy is one of the benefit words that so typically what's going to happen when you ask the tag, if you have taken them through this process correctly, meaning, so let me explain one other piece here, that I've asked enough of these who, what, when, where, how questions. If I've asked enough of those questions, when I say, what does having that backyard mean to you? He's either going to say a benefit word or he's going to talk around it. He'll explain it enough for me to understand the benefit word. If he doesn't, meaning if he goes, oh, it'd just be perfect. See, the way you know you didn't ask enough of these modifier questions is if when you say, so Trevor, what does having that backyard mean to you? I thought he was going to do that, by the way, is because he was like, because how did you say it at first? What does having it mean to you?
Having the extra space around me, so I can
Yeah, he goes, yeah, I would just really enjoy it. If they say I would really enjoy it, that's not a benefit word, by the way.
I'd like it.
Yeah, it'd be good. Like if they say, oh, it'd be perfect, that's not a benefit word. What they're telling you is you didn't ask enough questions here. So if that happens, then you got to loop back up here and ask, okay, well, so I guess I'm not real clear on the backyard then. So give me a little bit more information of who's going to use it or how you're going to use it, what's it going to be done, but that kind of stuff to get him talking more about it. And then I would come back and ask this one. So why is having that backyard important? And typically at that point, they'll then say the benefit word or they'll talk around it. Okay. I feel like I'm losing you guys here. Okay. All right, good. We good on that so far. So what's going to happen then is I should land on the benefit word here. Now what I'm going to do then is remember back here, he gave me the second one was the kitchen. So then I'm going to come back to the modifiers and now do that same thing with the kitchen. So I'm going to take this poorly written box there and it's going to be the kitchen. And I'm going to say, okay, Trevor, picture yourself in the kitchen. Tell me what you see. He starts to tell me about the kitchen. Well, it's any color cabinets but white and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Well, who's going to use it and how often do you use it? And what do you use it for? And what kind of, and I would ask, what kind of appliances are in there? And how many cabinets are you going to have? And what kind of countertop? But ideally, I'm asking the questions based on what he's shared with me. Okay. That's what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to, after I've asked again, back to a minimum of 5 to 7, I'm going to then say, so Trevor, what does having that kitchen mean to you?
Means being able to cook whatever I want and having all the space for the food.
Okay. So now notice we didn't take him through it. So we're not on a benefit. So I would have to be like, okay, so I would ask more questions and then he should say one of the 15 benefit words. Once I land on that, then I can say, okay, so it sounds like, Trevor, what we're looking for really in this house then is a backyard. You're looking for a property that will give you a backyard that gives you privacy from the neighbors so that you can, it sounded like probably he was heading towards entertainment as well, that you could entertain in and have privacy. And he'll go, yep. Okay. And then it sounds like in the kitchen, what we were looking for is, whatever the benefit was. Okay. Now, once I've landed on that, ultimately, because there were 2 or 3, I would feel like, okay, we've talked about the 2 items that he brought up. So now I would jump into that. So Trevor, let me tell you how I work. You've given me a really good picture of what you're looking for in a home. I have a really clear understanding. Let me tell you how I work. I'm going to go out and look at every home in the market in your price range, but I'm only going to show you the ones that meet your needs. So I'm saying it that way because I want him to know I'm going to go look at every property. You don't have to. So I'm going to go look at every property in the price range, but I'm only going to show you the ones that meet your needs. Well, my experience says I'm going to have to look at 10 to find one that would work for you. So if we're going to go look at 3 or 4, I will have previewed 30 to 40. Now, the reason I'm saying that is I want him to feel like I'm going to work really hard for you. Then I'm going to say, so I'm going to go out and preview 30 to 40 to find the 3 or 4 for us to look at. I'm willing to do that, provided that during the time we're working together, you'll commit to working exclusively with me. He's going to say, yep, that's great. I'm going to say, I got an agreement that states that in writing, have him sign the buyer broker. He signs it. Once he's signed the buyer broker, then I'm going to go into the other script, which is the after setting the appointment, which I kind of went through with you guys already about, hey, when we go out and look at properties, we're going to find one for you to write an offer on. A no is just as important to me as a yes, blah, blah, blah. Okay. All right. So let me give to you guys. And then for you guys on, I'll just take one and take one down and pass it around. Okay. For you guys that are on Zoom, I'm going to, put it in the chat box. I think I sent it in the email yesterday as well. All right, let me get the chat box going here.
I get extra.
Did you get one?
I did.
Okay.
All right, if you guys are on your phone on Zoom, you probably won't be able to see this. So if you didn't get one and you want one, shoot me an email or throw your email into the chat box and I'll get one to you. All right, so you should have, for you guys on Zoom, should have one there you can download. If not, then put your email in the chat box and I'll send you one after class. All right, so you can see on there, we've got then the, on the grid, it has the 15 benefit words. So let's just run through those. Oops. Shoot, did not mean to end that. I just lost all my notes. Oh well. Too bad.
There's not like a back button.
No, unfortunately, once you go out of it, I don't know why it won't keep it, but it clears them all out, but that's okay. All right, so let's go through the 15 benefit words. And I mean, you guys have them there, but so in fact, was there an extra copy?
Yes.
All right, so actually I'll just, since I cleared that out, we'll just go away from that. All right, so ultimately we'll just talk through these kind of quickly and then see what questions and things you have. But actually on this form that we've got here, at the very top, you'll notice it has the permission script. So it's got the permission script right at the top. So ultimately, what I would recommend is keep this one as kind of your master copy, and then you can make photocopies of this. So, but you'll notice there, so at the top it has, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, and I emphasize the word help there, because what I have noticed is sometimes what agents will do is sometimes agents will do it and say, in order for me to determine, so you'll notice I have the us all in caps and the help. Sometimes people will say, in order for me to determine if I can work with you, well, that's not what we want to say. The message is, in order for us to determine whether or not I can help you, I need to ask you a few questions. They may seem personal or be things you haven't considered. Will that be okay? They will say yes. Then after that, you're going to go, great, describe for me your ideal home. They're going to then describe that for you. You're going to write it down. Whatever they're saying, you're going to put then in the notes from what they're talking about of the features. So you're going to write down the feature and the detail about it in these boxes. Once you have done that, then you're going to say, okay, now that they've written those down, they've written them down, you're going to say, what are the 2 or 3 that are most important? And then I circle the 2 or 3. Then I'm going to, on your paper here, it says drill down to get more information, the who, what, when, where, how. So I'm going to ask those questions. Once I've done that for the number 1 feature. So remember I said, give me the 2 or 3. Once they give me 2 or 3, then I'm going to rank them. Which one's 1, which one's 2, which one's 3, okay? Then I will deal with one box at a time to say who, what, when, where, how. Then once we've done that, I'll say, why is having that important, or what does having that mean to you?
But when you're ranking them, are you just like assuming based off the first one they tell you is number 1, or are you going back and saying, okay, tell me which ones are those?
Yeah, so I'm going to first say, give me the 2 or 3. Once they give me 2 or 3, then I'll say, oh, if there's 2, then I'll just say which one's number 1.
Yeah. Okay.
But if there's 2 or 3, then I'll say, okay, which one's first, which one's second. If there's 2, which one's first, and then I know which one's second. But I'm going to, give me the 2 or 3, then I'll say which one's number 1. Yep. Then I'll start with number 1. Then when I say, what does having that mean to you, or why is having blank mean to you, important to you, they should say one of these 15 benefit words. So let's run through those real quick. So the first one is comfort. Think of comfort as being like creature comfort. So we have a little dog, and she will jump up on the couch, and there's a blanket that's on the couch for her, and then she'll like take her nose and like push on the blanket. And once she's done that, then she will like lay down, but then she's not comfortable, so she'll stand up and turn around, and then she'll lay down, and eventually she just kind of goes like, that's comfort. Think of comfort as creature comfort, kind of just. So sometimes, like Trevor talking about the backyard, could have been, hey, I want the balcony. And when I said, so who's going to use the balcony? If he would have said, it's going to be me using the balcony, and I'm going to go out there and I'm just going to sit down on it, and that's my way at the end of the day to just sit down and decompress. Well, that would probably be him describing the purpose. The benefit of the backyard would be comfort for him. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, next, convenience. convenience is about ease of use. So for me, when I yesterday was asking you guys, having you guys ask me the questions you had written down, and you would say, where do you want to be? And I kept saying somewhere in the central part of the valley, somewhere in this, for me, this is one of my benefit words is convenience. Is having been in real estate for so long, like I love the fact of I want to be close to freeway access so that if I got to go show a house on a Saturday or whatever, that I can, boom, I'm on, leave the house, boom, I'm on the freeway, I can get wherever I need to go. And that's why I was saying more central. So, but it was about convenience. Same thing with when I said I wanted a pool in the basement. It was about convenience to exercise, okay? Safety is about physical safety. Now, here's what I will tell you. I have typically found that this one, safety actually comes up very little. And what I mean by that is people will sometimes talk about physical safety, but I believe really what they're referring to is the next benefit word, which is security. Security is peace of mind. So a lot of times when people are talking to you, I want to have a fenced backyard, you would think they want the fenced backyard for their physical safety, you know, and they even say, I don't want the kids to go run, I want the kids to go in the backyard to be able to play without running out into the street. So you're thinking safety, but what does that do for the parent? Yeah, it gives them peace of mind, which is security. See, same thing with as a kid growing up, my dad was a pharmacist and he owned his own pharmacy. And I remember many times we'd be sitting down to eat dinner, the phone would ring, he would go answer the phone, and then he'd hang up and say, oh, I got to run out to the store because the burglar alarm's going off. Now, you notice we don't call them burglar alarms anymore. What do we call them?
Security.
Security systems. Why did they change the name from burglar alarm to security system? That's right, because it's a more positive, like burglar alarm sounds scary. Security system gives you the peace of mind. The reason they do that is it's a peace of mind kind of a thing. Okay, so security is peace of mind. Safety would be physical safety. But what I've found is typically when people are talking about their physical safety, it's really going to give them security or a peace of mind. Okay. All right. Privacy should be fairly obvious. That's where if Trevor Sandy wanted to have the backyard lined with trees so that neighbors can't see it. They want privacy. Okay. Love is pretty self-explanatory as well. And like I say, a lot of times that one will show up in the kitchen, or it's a mom worried about the kids and wanting to show the kids that they love them kind of a thing is where that will show up. Prestige and esteem. Think about prestige and esteem as being like a heads and a tails of a coin, meaning they're closely related, but here's the difference. Prestige would be, I want that home high on the hill with a view of the city lights, because when I have my friends come over, I want them to be like, wow, you live here? That would be prestige. If what I said is I want the home high on the hill so that when I drive home from work after a long, hard day of work, I pull up and go, yeah, this is why I work so hard. That would be esteem. So if it's about themselves, it's esteem. If it's how other people see them, that's prestige. Okay. Value, and then I put in parentheses on this one already, is making money. So value is about making money. So if somebody's saying, hey, I want to buy a house and then be able to, fix it up and turn around and sell it, that's going to be value. Okay. The next one is economy. Economy is about saving money. So if somebody's saying, hey, we need a high efficient furnace and we want to have triple pane windows and, thick insulation and 2x6 for the walls exterior, like that's going to be about economy or saving money. Now, let me on that one, like if somebody was saying like they were describing the house they wanted and they were talking about this, solar panels and all of this energy efficient stuff, I probably wouldn't say, oh, okay, so it sounds like what you're looking for in this home is economy. Although you could, but I typically probably wouldn't do that because they probably would be like, yeah, I guess. But if I just said, really, it sounds like it's about saving money, not having to spend a bunch of money on, heating the house and stuff. Yeah, that's what it is. Then I would just know, okay, that's what it's about. All right. Next, entertainment is about having a bunch of people come over to, entertaining them. So recreation that was for me. That's what I wanted the 1 acre for, was recreation, is what the benefit I was looking for. But notice I don't have the 1 acre, but I have the benefit of right outside of my backyard. In fact, on Sunday, I went over there with my 12-year-old and was throwing pitches, and he was hitting the ball, trying to hit it across the park into the neighbor's
backyard, which I told him, Chad, the first time he hits one into the backyard of the neighbors, we're never hitting at the park again. But he's bounced it over a couple times into their yards, but he's getting really close. All right, so recreation. Next one, sex. Do I need to explain that one? Self-explanatory on that one, right? Well, but actually, let me say this, because sometimes people are like, that's never going to come up. I have actually only had it one time, but it did. And here's what it was. So I have offered, what?
I was gonna say strong support beams in the ceilings.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard some funny stuff for sure.
Hooks already drilled in everywhere.
Yeah. One of the things, and this is where I will offer this to you guys as well, is if you ever are wondering how good you are at doing this, like if you wanted me to evaluate in terms of your skill on the needs analysis, not sex, Trevor, I know that's where you were going. But if you're wanting me to, like, hey, I've sat down with a client, but I don't feel like I'm getting to the benefit, I will be happy to sit down with you. So I've offered that for years and years. I had an agent from Park City call me and said, hey, I got a client. I want you to sit in and listen to it. And I don't know if this was a setup. I don't think it was, but so anyway, we were in an office building. Actually, the other side of this complex is the building that's just kitty corner that way from here. It was the office building we were in. And he had his client come down to the office. We sat down and he was taking him through, describe for me your ideal home. And, one of the things the guy said was a hot tub in the backyard. And he said, so when he got to the modifiers, who's going to be using it? Me and my wife. And what are you going to be using it for? Oh, just to get together and connect and, blah, blah, blah. And so what does having that mean to you? Oh, it'd be my wife and I have some, alone time together. And the agent says, so you'll notice on this paper, it says, summarize back what you heard. So when they give you the benefits, so Trevor's saying the backyard's about privacy. I'm going to say, okay, so it sounds like what we're looking for then in the backyard is privacy, a way to kind of have some entertainment with your friends, but not worry about the neighbors watching what's going on the whole time. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So this agent says, so what does having the hot tub mean to you? And the guy says, well, it'd be a place for my wife and I to have some alone time and connect and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, okay. So if I understand you correctly, what you're looking for is a place for you and your wife to have some really good sex. And the guy goes, well, yeah, but I wasn't going to say that. So here's the thing for me, I would never actually say that. If it were me, and I don't know if the agent said that because I was sitting and listening, but if I would have been the one doing it, they said that, I would have just said, so it sounds like then what you're looking for in the hot tub is a place for some romance or for you and your wife to have some intimate time or something. And I would have known then the benefit is sex, but I wouldn't have probably said it the way he did. But anyway, all right.
Straight to the point.
Yeah. So the next one is aesthetics. So the aesthetics, how you're typically going to know this is when I've had that come up with clients, it's usually because they're talking about the details. So like the one that comes to my mind always when I think about this was I had somebody that was telling me, describe for me the ideal home. And they started telling me, I want an older home because they have character and blah, blah, blah. And as we got through it, they started talking about, the doorknobs that have like etching on the door. Like when they start talking about etching on doorknobs, the benefit they're looking for is the aesthetics of it. So if they start talking about crown molding and chair rail and, a certain type of brick that's got this exact look, they're probably the benefit they're looking for is the aesthetics of it, what it looks like. Does that make sense? Okay. Next would be health. So if Trevor, when he said he wanted a single level home, if I had said, you mentioned a single level home, tell me more about that. If what Trevor had said to me was, well, yeah, I have bad knees, and so I don't want to have stairs to go up and down, that would be health. Somebody's saying they want a pool in the backyard. Well, what are you going to be using the pool for? Well, I had a heart attack, and so the way that I'm exercising is my doctors told me I need to go swim every day. That's going to be health. So another one for us in Utah, I want to be up on the hill because I want to be above the inversion. Like that could be health. I don't want to breathe that gross air in the winter time. That's health. Okay. And then self-actualization. Think of self-actualization. I actually don't know that I've ever actually had that come up, me personally, in the interview with a client. But self-actualization would be more about like, almost think of it as it's kind of the person who's accomplished everything that they wanted to in life. And it's kind of like, now I can just work on what on me and kind of become who I think I was created to be or whatever. Is that like that's the poet or a songwriter or something that's just kind of like I'm doing it because I just feel like that's who I am. I'm not doing it for the money. I do it because I feel like that's my life's mission or whatever. Does that make sense? All right. So ultimately what we're trying to do in this process is to get to one of those 15 benefit words. The whole thing that I'm doing, when I say describe for me your ideal home, and they're going to describe the ideal home, then I'm going to say, so give me the 2 or 3 most important. They're going to do that. Then I'm going to take the 2 or 3 and I'm going to drill down on them with those who, what, when, where, how questions. And everything about it is designed around getting the pictures, the decisions, and then ultimately the tag, which is saying, what does having that mean to you? It is where the feelings should come into it. Once those have reintegrated is when crystallization should occur. Once you crystallize on it, now here's the key thing. Once they have crystallized on that, when I go show a property now, I'm not going to talk about the backyard. I'm going to talk about the privacy of it. So if I'm showing Trevor a property, I'm not saying, oh, does this have enough trees? Like, I'm not worried about the trees. I'm worried about the privacy. So each time we walk into a backyard, I'm going to say, Trevor, is this going to give you the privacy you need to entertain with your friends? And so now he's looking at it from that standpoint versus, are these trees tall enough? Does that make sense? So that's how I'm approaching this. And same thing on the one story. I'm going to be looking at it and saying, hey, does this look like it would work if your parents have to end up moving in with you? Is this going to give them the comfort or whatever the benefit word was that you're looking for? So you're selling the benefit, not the feature. Does that make sense? All right. What questions? None?
I always think about things like 3 hours later. Oh, shit.
Well, write it down or come find me, text me, whatever. All right. So I've given you the scripts too. So on the scripts, just think of it this way. So the first one on there on that paper that has the scripts is the permission. Then the next one is let me tell you how I work. So the let me tell you how I work, you're going to use after you've landed on the benefits. Once you've landed on what their 2 or 3 benefits are, then you're going to say, let me tell you how I work. Once you've done that and they've signed the buyer broker, then is when we're going to now schedule an appointment to go look at houses. And I'm going to use that after setting the appointment script. The concept of that after setting the appointment script is we're going to find you a house to buy. And I'm going to ask you if you want to buy it after every house we go to. And a no is just as important to me as a yes. So here's the key thing. The whole purpose of that script of after setting the appointment is to set them up. And that maybe sounds worse than I mean it. But to set them up so that after every house we walk out, I can say, Tim, do you want to write an offer on this house? And I've already told him a no is just as important. So I don't want him to feel pressure. So if he says, no, I don't want to, I can say, great, let's go take a look at the next one. We come out of the next one. Do you want to write an offer on this house? Maybe. Okay. Well, maybe let's go look at the third one. We go look at the third one. Do you want to write an offer on this house? Maybe. Okay. Well, if you had to choose between the second or the third one, which would you choose? Probably the second one. Okay. Should we go write an offer on the second one and see what we could get it for? Yeah, let's do it. Like that's the whole idea is to make it easy for you to ask, do you want to write an offer? Most agents go show a property and come out and go, so what do you think, Swin? And they go, yeah, it was okay. All right, well, should we go look at the next one? Then we come out of the next one. What did you think of that? It's all right. Okay, let's go look at the third one. What did you think? Nah, none of these really got me too excited. All right, well, let's keep looking. See you later. Like that's not what we want to do. Instead, we want to, do you want to write an offer on that? If he says no on all 3 of them, then here's how I'm going to handle it. Swin, I apologize because the last thing I want to do is waste your time looking at properties that don't work for you. So I apparently, notice I'm going to take all the responsibility. I obviously missed something of what you're looking for in a home. Tell me what now notice I dropped right back into this process. Tell me what didn't work. And then he's going to go, well, we liked this, but we didn't like that. Okay, well, say more. And, all I'm going to do is get more detail and I'm kind of sending the message of, I don't want to waste your time looking at properties that wouldn't work for you. that's the whole idea of the after setting the appointment script. Make sense? All right. Good deal. Any other questions?
In this crazier market that we're in currently,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times, like I'm on the phone with people and I'm just like, I want to actually get in front of you and I want to show you homes right now, even though you have no chance in hell around me. Because they're going to be gone by tomorrow, but I still just want to sell that I can help you. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it's like,
in fact, you need to get in front of them.
The first time I'm like, I'm not wasting, I am inside a little bit, I think I'm totally wasting their time by getting their hopes up about this particular home, because I mean, it's gonna be gone. And they're barely in the early stages of getting their finances done. They're not even approved yet, you know. So that's where I'm like struggling. It's like, I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste my time. Like, gotta get in front of them. Let's just go look at some houses.
No, I agree. So here's what I do. So here's what I would do is in that scenario, sometimes what I'll do, Swen, is I will just say to them, hey, I want to just go look at a property. Just it may or may not be perfect for you. I don't know. I just want to go look at a property. One, so that I can meet you. But number two is as we walk through, you're going to think of things that you either want or don't want that you won't think of any other way. So what works best, afternoons or evenings?
That's kind of what I've used. I'm like, it's just more of like the first time.
Yep.
It's more like research. We're doing research
Yep,
on what
perfect.
you do
Yep.
like or do not
Perfect.
like.
Yep, that's
Okay.
great. Cool. All right, what other questions?
When you're walking someone through a home, do you find it better to kind of let them do their own thing? Because I know couples or people are more comfortable talking between themselves if there's rather than someone sitting there.
Yeah, for me, I very rarely say the only if I do talk while we're walking through, usually it's going to be to ask the question of, hey, so does this backyard look like it would give you the privacy you were talking about? Outside of that, yeah, when I open the door and I always say to them, hey, feel free to look around, open closets, cabinets, whatever. I mean, you're looking to see if you want to buy this house. So I'll just kind of follow you around. And if you have questions, let me know. And then, like I say, when we walk out to the backyard, after we're done looking at the backyard, as walking in, I may say, hey, Trevor, so does that look like it'll give you the privacy we talked about? So I may, do that. But outside of that, yeah, I don't go, all right, well, this is the kitchen. This is a bathroom. Like, they know. So mostly it's just I'm there to answer questions.
So when you get into the areas where they said was most important, you want to ask them, like if that one works for them, because then I guess when you're looking at the houses that you want to show them, you want to like make them similar kind of, or not.
Yeah, mostly I just want to figure out did I understand correctly what was going to create the benefit? Because for me, so which that brings up another good point is sometimes what will happen is they'll call you up because everybody's got access to the internet now. They'll jump on and they'll find a property and they'll call you up and be like, hey, Trevor, we just saw this property. Can we go take a look at it? And if it's in their price range, I've already probably narrowed it down for whatever reason. So I'll jump on to see why did I not include that one to begin with. And then I would call and be like, hey, Trevor, this one didn't have, the neighbor's house was looking into the backyard. So I'm happy to show it to you. And then I usually am just going to say, has something changed? Because my understanding was you didn't want the neighbor looking into the backyard. And that one, the reason I hadn't shown it to you is because the neighbor's house looks in the backyard. And then if he says, yeah, that's fine, we'll go take a look at it. Then ultimately what he's telling me is that wasn't as crucial as I thought it was then. But if he says, oh, it does, I didn't notice that. Yeah, never mind. Whew, good. I just saved myself from going to show a property that I didn't need to, Yeah, good question. All right. Well, so here's what we're going to do. So tomorrow is listing presentation. So tomorrow we're going to take what we've talked about today and okay, now how do we do all of that with a listing? So we're going to go through the listing presentation tomorrow. So.
Sweet.
Okay, cool. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks, Russ.
And you guys that threw emails in there, I will email you this stuff after, probably later today.
Thanks.
You're welcome. That's what you sounded like, by the way. Are you outdoor dropping right now, Jesse? He's just